Do not wait until 6 weeks before you resume exercise. Hello, my name is Aimerance. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am a first time mom and I'm also a women's strength training specialist as well as soon to be nutritionist. On this account, you'll be getting a lot of content on strength training as a woman, fitness in general as a woman, and how to nourish your body in a way that actually serves it rather than fight against it, and just general content on mothering. I'm so excited for this journey, and I want to be doing all of this without living my life in a hurry. A few years ago, I used to be a very chronically busy person. I was on the go all the time. And then I got convicted to slow my life down, not just for the sake of slowing down, but honestly to be present with the life I was living and be mindful with the choices that I was making so that I can actually live my life aware of what I'm living versus just living to get through the moment. You know what I mean? So if any of that resonates with you, I hope you hit a subscribe button and tell a friend to tell a friend. I hope this becomes your corner of the internet where you can come watch another mom kick ass in the fitness world, kick ass to become stronger and encourage other women to do the same. Because as a coach, that's my hope is to encourage and walk alongside women to live their healthiest, strongest versions without sacrificing their softness. Because I believe there is absolutely room for both. We can be very kick ass as women, and we can also be strong, and we can also be gentle. And all of those things coexist together. So, welcome here, and I hope you'll stay. Anyways, so as a first time mom, I am just nearing the end of my fourth trimester, our fourth trimester. And I wanted to share some of the things that I genuinely believe have played a huge part in my first early postpartum experience to not be a terrible one. Because I genuinely went into it just assuming it was going to be the most dreadful thing I will ever have to do because of how much other people just talked about how hard early postpartum was for them. And not necessarily to like invalidate what other people have experienced or anything like that, but I found that walking into it with intention genuinely helped the dreadful moments not be as bad as I think they maybe could have been. And so I want to share some tips on some of the things that I was intentional about before I even gave birth to help my husband and I live a very, very exciting actually and genuinely a generally joyful first postpartum experience for both of us. So, tip number one is do not marry a bum. What's that got to do with postpartum? I think just if you're in a relationship with somebody that you have to remind to consider you, that you have to remind to like you, that you have to remind to love you, I don't know that that's a person you want to be having a baby with because pregnancy takes a toll on your body, even if it's a generally healthy one. I didn't have a risky pregnancy. Mine was generally a simple one. And I can't imagine going through that process with somebody that I had to remind that, hey, I matter. Hey, can you love me today? So I just personally think that the partner you choose to have a baby with makes or breaks what your postpartum experience is going to be like. So if you can avoid it, please do not have a baby with somebody that doesn't care about you. And don't have it thinking that having a baby is going to be the thing that suddenly makes them see you differently. I don't think so. If it doesn't naturally come for them to just want to love you, if it doesn't naturally come for them to want to be considerate of you, I don't know that having a kid is going to be a thing that makes them suddenly want to do that. Maybe for some people they've experienced differently, but the chances are generally low of somebody to suddenly care for you when you're actually in the process of repairing what your body just went through after birth. So if you can absolutely help it, do not have a baby with somebody that doesn't care about you, or at least if you are going to go into it fully expecting that you're going to be a single parent as opposed to expecting them to suddenly carry you through it. So if you're going into it expecting that you're going to be doing it alone, at least that saves you the trouble of always assuming or expecting them to rise up because they might not, and that's just going to make you do so much more emotional and mental work and spiritual work too than you should be doing. So that's tip number 1. Marry somebody that actually likes you, or procreate with somebody that actually likes you, and procreate with somebody that you also genuinely like and respect. It will make your pregnancy a very, very generally enjoyable one, even if it does suck. And it will, I think, make a difference in what your postpartum experience is going to be like. Tip number 2, I would say go into postpartum expecting that it's going to be hard. I was talking to a friend a few days ago, actually. She's now a second time mom, and she's a new friend. And she asked me, is motherhood what you thought it would be? And generally speaking, it's not. For me, it's been better than I thought it would be. At least the early stages of it is what she was specifically asking, because for her, the first time, it rocked her world in a very negative way. She was a shell of a human being. And for her, she says, I just was not prepared. I was not expecting it to be that hard. And that's my second tip is like, even if you do, and she has a very considerate partner. I just met him yesterday. He's lovely. They have a great relationship. They know how to love each other well. He's very, very considerate. He's very thoughtful. So it wasn't even about that. It was just she had no clue that it would demand that much from her. So that's one of the things that I heard from a lot of friends of mine that already had babies before I did. And so my mentality was, this is going to be the hardest thing I'm ever going to do, so I'm going into it with that mindset already. And if it turns out to be not hard, then you're pleasantly surprised, versus arrive there and just be shocked by how hard it is. So I would tell you, go into it assuming and expecting that it's going to be hard. And then once you actually realize that it is hard, you just spend your energy figuring out what to do with the hardness, versus also just being shell shocked by the fact that, oh my gosh, this is hard. Because I think it is hard. But for me, my hardships about it has maybe not been necessarily about directly about my relationship with him. Thankfully, my hardships in postpartum has been more so about recovering physically from what my birth was. And maybe one day I'll share what my birth story was. But for context, I had second degree tears in various places, and I just have never been through that kind of pain. So like the suckiness of my postpartum weren't to do with, oh, the sleepless nights for this or this or that. It was more just like I genuinely cannot deal with having tears in my hoo-ha. That was insane. That was absolutely insane. And that's something that I actually did not prepare for, because I did everything I could to avoid tearing. And then my doctor told me within the last 5 minutes. Different story for a different time. So, anyways, my heart, like the hardships that I found with postpartum didn't have anything to do with my expectations or my assumptions on what motherhood would demand from me, and more to just like, okay, now I just need to heal my body and I need to take it slow. And that was the hard thing about it, because yeah, it's just in my nature to want to keep going, and that forced me to slow down, and that's what was hard about it. But generally speaking, when it comes to the sleepless nights, when it comes to if you're breastfeeding, how that journey could go, don't go into it assuming that it's just naturally all going to be like such a flow, because you might get rocked by how much it's not a flow. And so use your energy to figure out how to make it a flow as much as you possibly can, versus being shell shocked by that. So assume it's going to be hard, and either be pleasantly surprised or arrive there and put into plan what you're going to do now that it's hard, because I just can't imagine it being not hard. That's what surprised me, is assuming is that hearing that some people went into it not not realizing that it was going to be hard. To me, I'm just like, how could it be easy? I can't imagine it being easy. So if you're in you're experiencing your first pregnancy and you're about to give birth, or you're just going through your first early postpartum period, please, 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 please consider the fact that it could be the hardest thing you will ever have to do, and then figure out how you're going to do it, instead of going into it naive, like it's not supposed to be changing your world upside down. Not upside down. Like it's not supposed to be changing everything about your world, because it is. And that should be given some consideration. Anyways, I talked for a really long time on tip 2. That's tip 2. Tip number 3. Tip number 3, I'm going to tell you, prepare for your postpartum. That kind of goes well, like, goes well with assume that it's going to be hard. But I mean in the sense of when it comes to even like how women prep for what they assume the needs are going to be for their first baby in early postpartum. I think there's such a culture in the conception culture around babies and parenting in general really has us focusing more on the materialistic needs of baby versus the needs of mom. And so for us, we didn't have a baby shower. I'm not telling you to not have a baby shower. The reason we didn't have one was because a lot of our friends live not in our city. And so I personally was just not inspired to actually host or throw a baby shower because I didn't want to do it online. But I also am very thankful to have very generous in-laws that were able to get us the big items that baby actually could need, like the crib, the changing table, and things like that. So I would say when it comes to planning what your needs are going to be in postpartum, or if you're going to host a baby shower, make it about mom as much as possible. Because if mom's okay, then baby's going to be taken care of. Babies really early on, they do not need, there's no reason your baby needs to have toys in the first few weeks of their postpartum. They're practically blind. I mean, they're not, but like, you know what I mean? So there is no reason baby needs to have a lot of gadgets. So you plan for your postpartum in terms of like, oh, clothing. Find yourself some comfy clothes that you're gonna want to be in, because you're most likely not gonna be moving around a lot. You're most likely not gonna be going out a whole lot. So find things that you like if you don't already have them, that you can feel yourself comfortable in, that you can enjoy. You can at least get excited looking forward to. Do find things to look forward to in your early postpartum so that it can be emotionally more manageable. One of the things that I did to plan for my postpartum was my husband and I, we meal prepped. No, we've prepped food, not necessarily meals, because I don't want to eat the same thing over and over and over. I had like we have a freezer problem, as in that we don't have the biggest freezer space. So we prepped a lot of breakfast sandwiches and froze those. But then when it came to other items like meats, I actually pressure canned a lot of meat. I pressure canned a lot of spaghetti sauces that were meat based, because protein is king. And those just lived in our pantry. So then that dealt with the freezer problem, because in early postpartum you are so depleted of so many things, iron, blood, and hormones. You're so depleted of so many things that you want to be eating the highest quality foods you can, whole foods as much as you can, and you're most likely going to be eating a lot. So if you can put your energy towards cooking food to save for when that period comes, so that you can actually use your time bonding with your partner, bonding with your baby, instead of being in the kitchen 24/7 or having to spend more money on taking takeout. That's one of the ways you can take care of yourself in postpartum before the baby even arrives. I genuinely found that really helpful. And I do have a sweet husband who would not have minded spending every single day cooking for me every single meal, but it's his first postpartum experience doing a different way. So we thought, you know what, let's see if we can cut at least half, if not more, of the time we're going to need to spend in the kitchen by prepping as much as we can now, so that when baby arrives, we're just maybe going to be cooking rice, boiling pasta, spend maybe 20-30 minutes at most making our carbs, because we already have a lot of our proteins taken care of. So that's one of the genuine tangible things you can do for yourself to plan for your postpartum. Have your girlfriends come over, cook together, and if you're not into canning and you can't can for some reason, or you don't have all the freezer space, this is how your community can show up for you. Is you ask your friends if y'all can cook together and if they can store some of that food in their freezers, because some people are going to be like, I don't want to but it's going to be really short-lived. It's going to be really short-lived if they store some of that food for you, and then when they come visit, they can be like, I'm going to bring you lasagna that we cooked last time. So that's one of the ways that you can ask people to actually support you, those that want to come to your baby shower and do things for you. That's one of the things you can ask for them, is like, hey, can I please rent some space in your freezer to store all these meals, so that I don't have to cook for an eternity in those early 3 months. You're gonna love it. You're gonna thank yourself for having done that, because it's gonna save you so much time and so much headache of thinking what to cook, what to cook, what to cook. It's already gonna be decided. So that's tip number 3. Tip number 4, I will tell you, eat as much warm food as you possibly can. And the reason for that, without getting too nerdy about it, is that all the depletion you're experiencing, your iron levels are all sorts of whack. Your hormones, some of them are severely suppressed. So you want to be eating warm foods, especially for breakfast. If you can eat all your foods in those early, especially 6 weeks, if you can eat all your foods warm, try to have your breakfast to be a warm one. And the reason is warm food generally is better for your blood circulation, which your blood needs to be circulating in the speediest way possible to go to your uterus and to also help your digestive organs, because cold food generally makes blood circulation go slower, which makes you more sluggish and then also just keeps you cold. And it's also just not as comforting and cozy as a warm meal typically is, even if it's summertime. So if you can have warm meals, do that, because it genuinely makes your healing go faster, because it's helping your body do what it needs to be readily doing with your food, as opposed to having to heat it first, and then it doesn't clog your blood vessels. I mean, it doesn't really clog it. It just processes things much slower, which also honestly prolongs your healing. So you want to be having warm meals as much as possible. I know it's much easier to just, like, whip up um oats the night before and have overnight oats, or grab the high protein smoothie bowl, yogurt bowl, and those are all really good things you can have as a snack later on. But if you can have your first meal be something that just is gentle and warm and communicates to your body that you're safe, it's genuinely going to make such a huge difference. And if you don't have access to that, you probably have access to a kettle or a pot to boil hot water. If for some reason hot food is not something you have access to early in the morning, have a cup of tea or just warm water with some lemon and honey or something like that, at least to just get your body warming and working in a way to actually serve you better when you're in a state that you really need that help. And warm foods also just helps with elimination in better ways than cold food does. And by elimination, I mean number one and two, especially number two. Oh my gosh, the first few days after birth going was so terrifying, because I also, aside from the tears, I had external hemorrhoids that I've never in my life had before. I was genuinely scared of taking crap. And so warm foods generally helped with that. That's my tip. That's my fourth tip for you. My fifth and final tip is, as your resident fitness and strength training coach, do not wait until 6 weeks before you resume exercise. Hi, baby. And I know that probably contradicts a lot of what you hear, but exercise in early postpartum really needs to be contextualized. I'm not talking about going back to the gym and pumping iron like you used to before pregnancy or even during pregnancy. I'm talking about when you give birth, whether it's vaginal or it's C-section, your muscles are no longer connected as they used to be. Hi, baby. Your pelvic floor is disconnected from your core for the most part, and it needs intentional work, intentional exercise, intentional rehabilitation to reconnect all those things back together. So what I mean by exercise, I'm not talking, like I said, I'm not talking pumping iron, I'm talking do breath work, which at that stage in your early postpartum is considered, like, to me that's exercise, because it's re-strengthening muscles that are just so overworked through what birthing generally typically is. So don't wait until 6 weeks before you can start doing intentional breath work. And if you want to know what that even means, or even what that looks like to do breath work that is considered exercise in early postpartum, once again, hit subscribe, because that's what I'm going to be sharing. I'm going to be sharing how to breathe in a way that reconnects your core to your pelvic floor, which is essential for people that like to be on the go, which is essential for people that want to get back to the gym as fast as possible, which speed is not the case here, but as safely, maybe, and securely as possible. So hit that subscribe button. Don't wait until 6 weeks, and keep following me for tips on what exercise in early postpartum looks like to help propel you, so that by the time 6 weeks does come, I mean, 6 weeks is just such a random number. Why did we pick 6 weeks? Because not everybody's going to be ready to go back to the gym at 6 weeks. But there are things you can do to genuinely rehabilitate your body, to reconnect your core and pelvic floor in a way that actually supports your organs, so that you can soon resume moderate exercise and eventually back to high intense resistance training. Anyways, if you're curious what what those exercises look like I said, I will be sharing those. So make sure you're subscribed. And until next time, thank you for watching. Bye for now.